Hello Exiles, Paranoid here with another PoE 2 video. In today's video, I want to talk about my thoughts and some of the ideas that I have for Endgame that will help to increase the amount of participation from people, increase the amount of time that people participate in Endgame, and then what I want to do to, or like some of the thought that I have as an econ major on how to control the inflation in the economy, especially if we are keeping more people involved in the game for a longer period of time. Right now, what I noticed with this first season was there were a lot of people, they blasted hardcore the first couple days. They got to end game, they ran through maps, they went through, they juiced, they made it through, did all the content, killed all the pinnacle bosses on tier 4, and felt like there was nothing left for them to accomplish or to do in the game. And so they began leaving the game, going and doing other things. That's not necessarily a bad thing, the way seasons are implemented. Most of them are going to come back when that season drops on April 4th, which is definitely good. But for the actual economy of the game, for the player base, to keep those blasters involved for longer, putting things on the trade site to where those of us that don't move through as quick actually have an opportunity to maybe pick some items up from the trade site, improve our characters, and get to a level, albeit slower than they got to, still be able to get to that level because we have access to those items. So the first step is, how do we keep them more involved? How do we keep the general concept of what GGG wants to do with the punishment on when it gets to end-game maps, but at the same time relieve a little bit of the stress of that punishment and put a little bit of control in the player's hands? So we're playing the game that GGG has made and that GGG wants us to play, with a little bit of an option to be able to play that game the way we want to play it and the way we enjoy playing it. So the first place I want to start is there. How do we keep people involved longer? And how do we make it a better experience for everybody throughout the map process to where they have a little bit more control over the gaming experience that they get out of the game? And my thought on it is this: when we go to the map device and we click on a map that we want to run, so here we have Mire. It has a breach on it. I love running breach. I have been juicing up my maps for breach. You can see a bunch of these that I've run. The towers in these maps in this area ranged anywhere from 73% quantity up to 97% quantity. I've had a couple of maps that I ran by I got lucky and got the percentage from my Atlas passives that it doubled the prefixes on my Waystone, or no, I don't think it doubles it, but increased the prefixes on the Waystone, and then also increased the what I was getting from the towers that were impacting that node. So I've had a couple of maps that I've run that were like 275, 276% quant, somewhere in that area. Definitely makes those drops. There's a lot more drops that happen. Makes it a much more fun map to run. And it's just all around a good time. However, as I put those breach tablets in, I still have several where there'll be a Savannah that doesn't get the breach on it. So now I'm stuck running, like this one, actually, I believe that was a dead Savannah. All these towers, it went somewhere else and left that Savannah plain. It did. I think it actually was irradiated and had a map boss on it. But other than that, it didn't have breach. It didn't have ritual. It didn't have delirium. It didn't have expedition. It didn't have anything to it other than Savannah. Had some juiced up quant. It wasn't a bad map to run, but I wasn't able to actually take part in the in-game mechanics. So one of the things that I want to look at, and where I propose that we make the change, here's one fortress, not necessarily one that I want to put a breach in, but it has nothing on it. So When we open up the map device and we go to put our maps in, there are actually 4 slots here. So what I propose that we do is take and allow me, whether you want to call it a precursor page or something like that, another drop that I can get that is, it may not have as big of modifiers on it as far as quantity and stuff like that, but I could actually go through and add breach to this map. So I would put my waystone in, and then I would put the breach page in next to it. And let's say I wanted to have breach and ritual. I could put my waystone in, breach, and ritual in. And actually have up to 3 things that I could put, as Elon says, 3 things that I could put on that map. And obviously, the more things, the better. So that to me allows, and you still keep the pain of dying because let's say I go through and I run this map and I lose. Well, then I'm going to lose the 68% quant that I have from the tower tablets that I have in, but it doesn't become a completely dead node that has nothing to it at all because I can add in those pages to make it a better node. Or when I put my precursor tablets in the towers, if they don't hit the one map that I really want them to hit, I can still add that mechanic to that map so I can run the map in a way that I want to run the map, that I have fun playing it, but at the same time, I am still playing GGG's game the way they envision the game and with the difficulty and the penalty for death that comes with that. Now, how does that keep the blasters involved for longer? Because if they're able to do that, they're just going to get even more currency quicker and get to the end game, get to those pinnacle bosses and do those types of things even quicker. So what the other thing that I would like to that I think we ought to be able to do with this is combine my waystones so that the sum of the level of the waystones is the level of the map that I am running. For instance, if I put a T15 waystone in here and beside it I slot in a T10 waystone, I am now running a T25 map. I'm going to go ahead and make this trade real quick. While I'm doing that, I'll still kind of explain. So I'm still running a T25 map. Now, it could wind up getting to be a little bit overkill if we are able to keep all of the prefixes from both waystones to where we're actually running 6 prefixes and up to 6 suffixes on it. You could wind up with a little bit overkill there. But I do think that you should get some benefit out of it. And so the benefit that I propose out of it is rather than having a maximum of 6 mods on the waystone, when you combine it, it takes 4 from each waystone, 2 prefix, 2 suffix from each waystone, so that you actually wind up with 8 mods on it, or up to 8 mods on it, provided you have rolled your waystones out completely. By doing that, you are increasing the difficulty level, so those players that rush and have the high power level, they still have something to work towards because they could wind up with 2 T16s in there for a T32 map, which means that the level of gear that they're going to have, they're going to have to continue to build and add on that gear. The downside by doing that, so as we've all seen with the inflation, if we go to here and let's say I want to get Exalted, we're actually back down to 452. Part of the reason why I think we're down to the 452 on it is because the amount of players that have left, so you don't have as many exalts being dropped in maps, being spent at the currency exchange, in players' hands, which drives the inflation up and drops the values of things down. Which, if you have these in-game high-level players engaged for a longer period of time, the inflation is going to continue to rise. So much like with a country, what I would like to see through the currency exchange, and I'm not saying that every item in the currency exchange should be this way, but I think there should be some items specifically and mainly the omens should be a drop, or you could do a trade on the trade site. But if you are buying or selling omens on the currency exchange, that should not be player to player. That should be player to GGG. And what that does, that creates an exalt sink that pulls the exalts out of the market. And if GGG sets a set price on the omens, it will allow for more people to get into crafting. It will keep the prices regulated on those so that crafting can become a larger and more fun part of the game. Like, I would love to go through and use some Omens of Whittling and be able to do some things like that. But I'm a dad gamer. I haven't gotten a lucky last flame drop. I have not gotten a lucky Astra Menace to drop on the ground. I don't have anything like that. That I haven't gotten a mirror that's dropped. So I'm at 81 divines. I cannot go and drop 20 divines on an Omen of Whittling, plus another 25 to 30 divines on a Sinestral or Dextral Erasure to be able to one time try to chaos a targeted mod and hope that it rolls to what it needs to roll to. I just don't have the currency to be able to do that. I can't justify doing it. If I get an Omen of Whittling in a ritual, or if I get an Omen of Whittling drop from the King of the Mist, I'm just going to sell it because I need those divines, because I can't go through and sink the amount of currency into that. I can't go through and sink the amount of currency that it would take into those omens to try to be able to craft something myself. Now, what I can do, what I could do, and omens of whittling are probably the most powerful omen there is. So it can stay a high price so that it still has a little bit of a gate and it's not just easy peasy to go through and everybody's running around with mirror tier items, or not mirror tier, sorry, mirror items on every slot that they have because they bought their Omen of Whittling for 50 they bought, Omens of Whittling at 50 exalt. If they want to make the price of that 10 divine or even 20 divine, I am okay with that. What I would like to see is maybe on the Sinestral and Dextral Erasure. So if I'm running just a Sinestral or Dextral Erasure and I'm using that, I don't have the guaranteed that it's going to hit the lowest item level. There's still the RNG to it. So with that, if they keep that price regulated, say maybe to a divine or two divines a piece, then I can go through and actually attempt to get an upgrade on my item, even if it might not get to a mirror level item. I could still upgrade it to have that sense of accomplishment, that sense of pride of I'm using an item that I found or I made myself, rather than that I went and got off of the trade website that somebody else got. And who knows if they even got it legitimately at this point with the amount of dupes and hacks and the things that have happened early in early access. I'm hoping a lot of those backdoor things and those types of things get taken care of. They get cleared up, and we don't have as much of that going forward. I know from what I've heard, I was not a POE 1 player. I don't have a frame of reference to come from with POE 1. From what I have seen and what I've heard about GGG, they do take it very seriously. Those accounts are going to get permabanned. They're not going to be back on the server. I do think that they go through and they've done the hot fixes for the instance crashes and the things where people were taking advantage of some of those types of things that was putting items on the market that never should have been on the market at the amount that they were on the market at. So being able to go through and craft, make an item myself, find an item on the ground, and make a couple of modifications. And now it's actually an upgrade for me, and I want to use it, and I'm putting it in my build. Or maybe I go through and I'm able to get something, and it gives me a stat that I hadn't even thought about. Now all of a sudden I'm considering, because the item is just so good all around, I'm going to find a build that it works in. I think it's going to increase the player satisfaction. It's going to increase the player engagement, and it's going to increase the build diversity if we do that. The other thing that does is it keeps it as a sink. And I say, we make them one or two divine. I think that on the currency exchange, they should only be tradable for exalts. So it might be one or two, the equivalent of one or two divine, but you actually have to sell your divine, get exalts, and then turn those exalts in for those omens. And what that is going to do, that is going to actually regulate the economy and keep that sync for the exalts, so that there's, even though people are hitting the higher tier maps, you have more people involved playing the game for a longer period of time. So more exalts are dropping from monsters and are on the ground. They're then going to turn around, they're going to get those omens, they're going to try working on their items and crafting and building up, because hey, they want to run that tier 32 map. So they are going to actually need to basically have mirror items on every slot. That is going to regulate and keep the economy from being over flooded. It's the same thing with a nation. So, obviously, as you can probably tell, I'm from the United States. The United States prints and has a certain amount of money that's put into circulation. They can't just go through, I mean, they could. Their printers could go through and print as much money as we wanted. But the more money that they print out and that they put into circulation, the lower the value of that money becomes. So what you can wind up having happen is everybody might have, number wise, a higher number of dollars in their pocket, in their bank account, however you want to look at it. But because the value of those dollars has dropped so much, their wealth is actually less than it was before. That's what I have seen happen, to the tune of 4-1 on exalts. The exalts have dropped significantly in price. They're worth about a quarter of what they were in the first month of early access. That's going to keep that inflation down. I'm not saying there won't be some inflation. There's going to be some, that extra is going to hit the market and it's going to be there, but it's going to keep it from going as crazy as it's gone. 2 weeks ago, it was almost 7-1 what it was in the first month on the I say the value of exalts, but actually the lack of value in exalts, where we went from, in the first month, about 90 to 100 exalts per divine, to a week ago over 700 exalts for a divine. Now we've come back down. We're at about 450 exalts per divine. If By making that sync and making that to where it just goes back to GGG and basically just gets pulled out of the economy, so you keep the amount in the economy at a lower level, then what you're going to wind up having happen to try to regulate it to where maybe there's no more than 100 exalt swing in the value of divines, which again is going to keep newer players engaged for longer. It's going to allow newer players to enjoy the game later into the season, because they might, or I shouldn't say newer players, slower players. Some players may have all the game knowledge in the world, but it comes down to time, because real life happens and gets in the way of spending all your time on PoE too. So if they don't have the time to put in to rush to endgame on day one and be running tier 16 maps by the end of day two and have their temporalis by the end of the first week, they're still going to be able to progress and go through in a manner that feels meaningful and doesn't feel like, well, The only way I might as well just do solo self found because I can't play in a trade league anyway at this point. That's going to keep that going. It's, as I said, you're going to have the blasters getting up, pushing, trying to run those tier 32 maps, and then their items, as they're getting their upgrades, are going to hit the trade site so that the people that are a little bit behind them can make minor upgrades to get to theirs. And you know what? Maybe a casual only gets to running T21 maps instead of T32s. That's fine. I think it's kind of like I come from Diablo, so I'm going to make the comparison here in my the way I look at it is when the pit was introduced in Diablo. You have your hardcore players that it's all about pushing the highest level of the pit that you can push. For the casual player, as long as you can get to pit one, as long as you can get to tier 100 on the pit, then you are getting the max benefit. You know, after tier 100, the diminishing returns on your crafting materials become so high that the only reason to do anything over tier 100 is strictly for for the ladder, for the leaderboards, and just for the joy of the challenge of pushing it. So a casual player may only get to a T21, but they're by being at a T21, they're going to have that enjoyment. They're going to get those drops. They're going to see that progression. It's going to be steady progression that they're going to be able to continue on throughout. And yes, a blaster may be done after a month and a half, and maybe they've completed the T32 and then they're ready to take the break. It might be 2 months, it might be 2.5 months, but if it gets an extra week to 3 weeks for them engaged in playing, that turns around and gives more time for the casuals to stay engaged in playing. And you're going to have a higher player base online throughout the life cycle of the season. And I think it would just create a higher engagement and a higher level of fun, and overall make for a better game experience both for the players and for GGG. So that's my video. Just kind of wanted to go over my thoughts on some things that they could do that would help with Endgame in order for GGG to kind of to keep their view and what they want the game to be intact, but also allow some customization for the players to be able to play the game the way they want to play it, the way they enjoy playing it. So to me, it's a win-win for both GGG and for the players, and it extends the life cycle of a season. It keeps the economy in check, and just all around makes for a better play experience for, in my opinion, the most experienced, hardest blaster to the most casual slash newest player there is. There can be enjoyment, a consistent level of enjoyment that extends for a longer period of time across the board. And by having that sync and controlling the economy, that really helps take it even further to last longer and be better, just a better experience for everybody all around. So, again, just my 2 cents. Would love to know what you guys think. If you like this, if you like the ideas that I have, I could go through and I can do build guides. I will tell you I was not a PoE 1 player, so my build is from a guide that I have copied. Uh, You've seen all the guides before. We know what the builds are that are out there. Obviously, new ones are going to be coming out on April 4th. We're going to have a lot of new things coming come April 4th. But I wanted to try to add some value. So if you found some value, if you like the ideas, if you have any thoughts of your own, anything that I could tweak or change on the idea or that could make it a little bit better, definitely put it in the comments below. Would love to hear from you. Like and subscribe, and I will continue to try to come up with some thoughts, some ideas, and make some content for PoE 2 because honestly, I really do enjoy the game. I think that it is, in what I've played of it so far, it has a great balance of the difficulty to push through the campaign, which is amazing. Then you get to the end game and you get that you can get that God feeling like everybody goes for in an ARPG. I just think all around that it's a great game, and I want to see it be the best iteration that it can be, and I want to see it last as long as it can last. I'm hoping for the 10, 13, 15-year life cycle that PoE 1 was able to maintain and the success that they were able to maintain through it. And these are just ways that I think that they can extend each season, keep the player base involved, keep the excitement up, and so I welcome any thoughts that you all have on it, and would love to hear more from you, and plan to make more videos on just different thoughts and ideas that come to me. I will be streaming every day this week. I am off work, so the stream time will be a little bit different. Rather than the 10 to 11:30 slash midnight Eastern that I'm usually able to stream, I'll actually be streaming a little bit earlier on. Most of the streams are going to be me going through and doing Trials of Sekimas. I may do some Trials of Chaos as well. I am trying to find that last flame, because at this point right now, about the only way that I can upgrade the build that I have is to get one of those high value drops like the last flame. That's one that I can chase and that I can go for. Right now, I am currently running the some Desperate Alliance runs with it, but once I finish those Desperate Alliances, I'll go back to it's not full relic quant runs, but I think I have about 140% relic quant on the runs, and just shooting and praying for that last flame. So would love for you to join me there, chat with me, let me know live and in person what your thoughts and ideas are. Outside of that, I look forward to seeing you all later. Stay sane, exiles, and have a great night.